I'm Santanu and I'm a senior research fellow and professor of modern literature and culture. Welcome to my exp. How does one understand and recover the experience of the past, particularly the texture of human experience, when those people did not leave behind many historical footprints? I think that some of the people had been most interested in some of the topics, like, for example, the intimate history of First World War, or the entire colonial dimensions of warfare, the involvement of 4 million people of color in the First World War, or more recently, the whole maritime world, the world of sailors. Now, these men were either non-literate or often couldn't write about their experiences. So, what do we do about that? And it led me to move beyond conventional sources into images, paintings, photographs, objects, artifacts, songs. I think songs are very, very important the moment we step beyond Europe. And then finally, literary texts. And I've been trying to understand this texture of past experiences by putting these diverse kinds of material next to each other and let the different sources even argue amongst themselves. Around 4 million men of color were recruited into the European and American armies, and of them almost 1.5 million Indians. And when I say Indians, I mean people from what was undivided India then, and now it's South Asia, so it's Bangladesh, Pakistan, India, and Myanmar. So there were 1.5 million Indians, including 900,000 combatants and 600,000 non-combatants. And I wanted to recover their experiences. We use the word hidden history, and it's hidden in two ways. Firstly, their contribution was not known. They had fallen almost into the no man's land between the European or Eurocentric histories of the war on one hand and the nationalist histories in India or Pakistan, but also hidden because I wanted to recover an experiential or rather intimate history not sealed in monuments and medals, but about the everyday. I was on holiday in India and I happened to visit the Duplé Museum in Chandannagar, which was the former French colony within West Bengal, where I came across this broken pair of glasses and the label said bloodstained. And it belonged to Jogen Shen, who was killed in May 1916. And then I started doing more research and I realized that he was the only person of color in the Leeds Pals battalion, and he was the most educated man in that battalion, but he was never promoted beyond a private because of his skin color. And then there were other little things like a dog tag, picture of a woman, and then other things found on his body. But it's the glasses that even today haunt me, that these glasses would be shipped back all the way. One of the most extraordinary discoveries in the history of war in recent years had been this audio recordings which were done between 1915 and 1918 by the Royal Prussian Phonographic Commission. It was a commission which was formed of ethnographers, linguists, anthropologists, and they would go and record voices, and we have more than 2,000 recordings, of which around 300 are of kind of South Asian prisoners of war, of which the one that is perhaps most remarkable is that of Mal Singh. Usually the men were made to read a poem if they were literate, or sing a song, or tell a story. What Mal Singh does is basically to to completely subvert that and tell his own life story. It's one of the most moving records where he refers to himself in the third person and he says, "There was a man in India who came to the war in Europe." And he goes on to say that he misses the taste of the ghee or butter he used to have back in Punjab. And if he is allowed back, he can again have the same food. Suddenly you realize this sense of tremendous kind of longing and loneliness, and home is being remembered on the palate as taste. I keep on wondering that would he ever know that his voice, done in this most horrendous of circumstances, in this prisoner of war camp in Bunsdorf, would ever reach us 100 years later. A very rare letter that has been unearthed in recent years about the whole Indian experience is by this young girl, I think maybe 10 or 12 years old, from Punjab, writing in Gurmukhi to her father serving in Egypt. And I'll just read out, and you can see the letter, and it's a child's hand where she has joined all the letters, and I will just read out a few sentences in translation. "We came to know about you. We were really scared after receiving your letter. Mother says that you can write to us about what goes on in your heart. Father, I shall read all your letters. My heart is yours. You are everything to me, and I worry about you. I am like living dead without you. Dear Father, please take leave and come and meet us. Please do come." And suddenly, reading this letter, you realize that this young girl is learning how to read and write so that she can read out her father's letter to the mother who is non-literate. And suddenly, the war front in Egypt and the home front in Punjab, they suddenly come very close, and you realize that some of these oblique effects of the war, that this education in Punjab is happening because of this kind of participation of this Indian man in Egypt. And it is rare because I don't think there is any other artifacts that we have of someone so young and writing so movingly. During 1914 and 1918, hundreds of thousands of Indians, they were sailing to the heart of whiteness and beyond Mesopotamia, East Africa, resulting in this kind of dizzyingly wide variety of encounters, in battlefields, in hospitals, in boardrooms, in brothels, and in markets. And I will just give one example. This is a letter from Sher Bahadur Khan, written on 9th January 1916 from France. And he's writing about this elderly French woman with whom he had been billeting. Now we read from the letter. "Of her own free will, she washed my clothes, arranged my bed, and polished my boots. Every morning, she used to prepare and give me a tray with bread, butter, milk, and coffee. When we had to leave the village, the old lady wept on my shoulder. Strange that I had never ever seen her weeping for a dead son. And yet she should weep for me. Moreover, at our parting, she pressed on me a 5-franc note to meet my expenses en route." And I think we need to think beyond these binaries of colonizer and colonized, because these are very powerful encounters where race, vulnerability, loneliness, affection, all of them are fused and confused. Then I suddenly came across exactly this passage in a text written by Kipling called Eyes of Asia, where he imagines himself to be an Indian soldier. And I suddenly realized, and this is again in the British Library, that he had access to these letters and he's reprinting them for propaganda purposes. And I think both these aspects have to be acknowledged in order to understand this difficult, often contradictory legacies of war and empire, and the way they continue to haunt us even today.